Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I answered my door at 11:30 on a Tuesday night to find my twin brother Derek collapsed against the doorframe, face swollen beyond recognition, left arm hanging unnaturally, blood seeping through his torn shirt. Derek whispered, "They're going to kill me next time before collapsing." I carried my identical twin inside, seeing bruises in various stages of healing covering Derek's body. This wasn't the first beating. I realized my brother had been suffering in silence for months. My hands shook as I helped Derek to my couch, his weight heavier than I remembered from our childhood wrestling matches. Under the harsh living room light, the damage looked even worse. Purple and yellow bruises decorated his ribs like some sick artwork, and his right eye was swollen completely shut. Fresh cuts mixed with older scars across his knuckles and forearms. "Derek, what the hell happened to you?" I grabbed my first aid kit from the kitchen, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. He winced as I cleaned a gash on his forehead. "It's Amanda's brothers," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "They've been doing this for almost a year now." I stopped dabbing the wound. "Amanda's brothers? Tony, Brad, and Jason? Why would they be beating you?" Derek's good eye filled with tears. "They call it disciplining me. Every few weeks they show up wherever I am. Work parking lot, grocery store, even outside our house. Amanda tells them I'm disrespecting the family by not contributing financially to their schemes." My stomach dropped. "What schemes?" "Derek, you work at the accounting firm. You make good money." "That's just it, Byron." Derek struggled to sit up straighter. "They don't know about Grandma Rosemary's inheritance. The $200,000 plus the commercial property downtown. I never told Amanda about it because something felt wrong about how interested she became in my finances after we married." I set down the antiseptic wipe. "You've been hiding $200,000 from your wife?" Derek nodded, then immediately regretted the movement as he grimaced in pain. "Remember how she used to ask weird questions about our family's money? About whether we had any investments or properties? She'd bring it up during dinner like casual conversation, but something about her tone always bothered me. I remembered those dinners. Amanda had seemed loving and devoted, but now that Derek mentioned it, she did ask a lot of financial questions. I'd assumed she was just trying to plan their future together. "The beatings started getting worse when I kept refusing to sign papers," Derek continued. "Amanda would bring home these legal documents about reorganizing our assets for tax purposes. When I said I needed to read them first, or wanted to consult a lawyer, she'd get furious. Next thing I knew, her brothers would show up. "Derek, this is systematic abuse. Why didn't you call the police?" His laugh was bitter and hollow. "With what evidence? They're careful, Byron. They never hit me where normal clothes won't cover the bruises. They use phone books and rolled-up magazines, so there's no obvious weapon marks. And Amanda always has an alibi for them." I felt rage building in my chest. "What do you mean, an alibi?" "She tells people her brothers were with her during the times I got beaten. Movie nights, family dinners, helping her with household projects. She's got this whole system worked out." Derek's voice cracked. "And the worst part is, she's been feeding them information about my weaknesses, my schedule, even where I park my car at work. The pieces started falling into place. She's helping them target you. More than that." Derek reached into his jacket pocket with his good arm and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. "Look at this." I unfolded what appeared to be a legal document. Asset transfer papers, with Derek's name typed in as the signatory, transferring ownership of property and financial accounts to Amanda Walsh. The signature line was blank. "She's been pressuring me to sign this for months. Says it's just to streamline our finances and make tax season easier. But Byron, this document would give her complete control over everything I own, including Grandma Rosemary's inheritance." My hands clenched into fists. "This isn't about family discipline or contributing to schemes. This is about stealing your inheritance." I figured that out too late. Derek's voice broke completely. "Amanda's brothers aren't just random bullies. They're systematic. They know exactly how much pressure to apply and when. They've been escalating the violence because I keep refusing to sign. I stood up and began pacing, my mind reeling. How long has this been going on? The beatings started about 10 months ago, right after our first wedding anniversary. But the psychological stuff started before that. Amanda began isolating me from friends, monitoring my phone calls, questioning every purchase I made. She convinced everyone I was becoming unstable and that she was the long-suffering wife trying to help me. Unstable? Derek, you're the most level-headed person I know. Not anymore. Derek's admission was devastating. She's been recording me, Byron, during my worst moments, when I'd cry or beg her brothers to stop beating me. She has videos of me breaking down, pleading like a child. She threatens to show them to everyone if I ever leave or tell anyone what's happening. The rage I felt was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. My identical twin brother, the person I'd shared everything with since birth, had been systematically tortured and humiliated for nearly a year. And I'd had no idea. Derek, we're going to fix this. We're going to make them pay for what they've done to you. He shook his head weakly. You don't understand how dangerous they are. Tony works construction, and he's built like a truck. Brad deals drugs and has connections with really bad people. Jason's got gambling debts, and he's desperate. They're not going to just stop because you ask them nicely. I'm not planning to ask them nicely. Derek grabbed my arm with surprising strength. Byron, there's something else. Something worse. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I think Amanda might have done this before. What do you mean? I found some things in her old phone. Photos of documents, legal papers, even what looked like life insurance policies. And there were text messages with her sister Carol about the last guy, and how this one's taking longer than expected. My blood ran cold. You think she's done this to other men? I think Amanda married me specifically to get my inheritance. And I think when she's done with me, she's planning to make sure I can't tell anyone about it. The weight of Derek's words hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just abuse or financial manipulation. This was a calculated plan that might end with my brother's death. As I looked at Derek's battered face and broken spirit, I realized something fundamental had changed between us tonight. I wasn't just looking at my twin brother anymore. I was looking at a victim who'd been systematically destroyed by people who saw him as nothing more than a source of money. But Derek had made one crucial mistake in their calculations. He wasn't alone in this world. He had me, and I was willing to do whatever it took to protect him and make sure Amanda and her brothers paid for every single bruise, every moment of fear, every piece of his dignity they'd stolen. The war was just beginning, and they had no idea what they'd started when they decided to destroy my family. The next morning, while Derek slept off the pain medication I'd given him, I started digging into Amanda's background. What I found made my blood run cold with a different kind of fear. The fear that comes from realizing evil is far more organized than you ever imagined. I started with basic internet searches, but quickly moved to deeper investigation techniques I'd learned during my brief stint as a paralegal years ago. Public records, marriage licenses, property transfers, even social media posts that people thought they'd deleted. The Walsh family had a digital footprint that told a disturbing story. Amanda wasn't Amanda's real name. Born Angela Walsh, she'd legally changed her name twice, first to Ashley, then to Amanda. Each name change coincided with a move to a new state and a new marriage. I found marriage records spanning 5 states over the past 8 years. Amanda had been married 4 times before Derek, and every single husband had died or disappeared within 2 years of the wedding. The pattern was always the same: whirlwind romance, quick marriage, isolation from family and friends. Then financial irregularities, followed by the husband's death. Car accidents, apparent suicides, one case of accidental drowning during a fishing trip. But it was what I found on obscure men's rights forums that really shook me. Buried in the depths of internet discussion boards, I discovered testimonials from men who'd escaped situations remarkably similar to Derek's. One post from a user called Escaped in Time read, "The Walsh women are predators. My buddy married Carol Walsh in Nevada 3 years ago. Started with love bombing, then isolation, then her brothers started showing up to teach him respect. My friend signed over everything he owned just to make it stop. Found him hanging in his garage 2 weeks later. Cop said suicide, but I know better. Another post described Amanda specifically. Angel Walsh targeted my cousin in Oregon. Same playbook. Married him quick, got pregnant, then miscarried, used the trauma to isolate him from family. Her brothers are enforcers. Professional intimidation. My cousin got out, but only because he gave them everything and agreed to stay quiet. I printed every post, every record, every piece of evidence. By noon, I had a folder 3 inches thick, documenting what appeared to be a multi-generational criminal enterprise. When Derek woke up around 2 in the afternoon, I showed him everything I'd found. Derek, Amanda's family isn't just abusing you for money. They're professional inheritance hunters. They've been doing this across multiple states for years. Derek stared at the documents with his one good eye. How many men? That I can prove? 7 in the past decade? That I suspect? Maybe twice that many. He picked up one of the forum posts with shaking hands. They're going to kill me, aren't they? Not if I have anything to say about it. I sat down across from him. But Derek, I need you to tell me everything. Every detail about how this started, what Amanda's said, what her brothers have threatened. I need to understand exactly how their system works. For the next hour, Derek told me things that made me question how much evil human beings are capable of inflicting on each other. Amanda had started the psychological manipulation on their honeymoon. Subtle comments about his appearance, his job performance, his relationship with me and our parents. She'd convinced him that his family didn't really understand him the way she did. She made me feel like she was protecting me from people who didn't have my best interests at heart, Derek said, including you. She said you were jealous of our relationship and trying to sabotage our marriage. That's why you stopped calling me as much. She said you were toxic for me, that I needed to focus on building our life together instead of dwelling on childhood relationships that didn't matter anymore. I felt sick thinking about how Amanda had systematically cut Derek off from his support system. But it got worse. She started monitoring my phone calls after about 3 months. Said it was because she loved me so much and wanted to be part of everything in my life. She'd listen in on work calls, read my texts, even check my email. What about the drugging? Derek's face went pale. How did you know about that? Your symptoms, the way you described feeling foggy and weak, that's not stress, Derek. He nodded slowly. She started giving me vitamins about 6 months ago. Said I looked tired and needed better nutrition, but after taking them, I'd feel drowsy and compliant. I thought it was just exhaustion from the stress of the beatings. But you're right, she was drugging me. I made notes of everything, building a timeline of the systematic destruction of my brother's autonomy and dignity. The worst part, Derek continued, is that she's convinced everyone we know that I'm the problem. She tells people I'm having mental health issues, that I'm paranoid, and making up stories about her family. She's created this narrative where she's the victim trying to help her unstable husband. What about work? Haven't your coworkers noticed the injuries? Amanda coached me on how to explain them. Gym accidents, clumsiness, even a story about taking up boxing for stress relief. And the injuries are always in places that business clothes cover completely. I stood up and walked to the window, trying to process the scope of Amanda's manipulation. She hadn't just been stealing Derek's money. She'd been systematically destroying his reality, making him question his own perceptions and isolating him from anyone who might help. Derek, there's something else I found. Something about Amanda's first husband. Derek tensed. What about him? Michael Stevens, married to Amanda in Colorado 4 years ago. Died in a car accident 6 months after changing his will to make her the sole beneficiary. But the police report shows the accident happened on a straight, dry road in perfect weather. Michael was an experienced driver with no history of accidents or health problems. You think Amanda killed him? I think Amanda and her brothers have killed multiple men, and they're planning to kill you next. Derek started crying then, deep sobs that came from a place of terror and despair I'd never seen in him before. I don't know how to fight them, Byron. They've taken everything from me. My confidence, my money, my friends, even my sense of what's real and what isn't. I knelt down next to Derek's chair. They made one mistake. What's that? They hurt my brother. And now they're going to learn what happens when someone threatens my family. Derek looked at me with something I hadn't seen in his eyes for months. Hope. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time Amanda and her brothers met the other Byron Walsh. The one who's been watching them destroy my twin brother and is ready to return the favor. That night, I started planning something that would either save Derek's life or get us both killed. But looking at my brother's battered face and broken spirit, I knew I didn't have a choice. Amanda and her brothers had spent a year systematically destroying the most important person in my world. Now they were going to learn what real fear felt like. The hunt was about to begin, and this time, they were going to be the prey. The plan I proposed to Derek was insane, dangerous, and probably illegal. It was also the only chance we had to stop Amanda and her brothers before they killed him. We switch places, I told Derek over breakfast the next morning. I become you, and you disappear somewhere safe while I gather evidence and figure out how to destroy their entire operation. Derek nearly choked on his coffee. Byron, that's suicide. They'll kill you thinking you're me. Maybe. But I'm not going into this defenseless like you were. I pulled up my sleeve to show him the muscles I'd built from 3 years of serious boxing training. And I'm not going in drugged and isolated. I'll know exactly what I'm walking into. Derek studied my face, looking for signs that I was joking. You're serious about this. Dead serious. Derek, they're planning to kill you within the next few weeks. I found more evidence this morning. I handed him printouts from Amanda's text messages that I'd recovered using data recovery software on her old phone Derek had brought me. The messages were between Amanda and someone listed as Jay, presumably her brother Jason. The conversation was from 3 days ago. Amanda. Getting tired of waiting. D still won't sign. Jay. Tony's getting antsy too. Maybe time for permanent solution. Amanda. Been thinking same thing. Already have the note ready. Jay. Suicide angle? Amanda. Mental breakdown. Can't handle guilt of financial problems. Very believable given his recent behavior. Jay. When? Amanda. This weekend. Brothers can make it look like he hung himself in garage. Derek's hands shook as he read. They're going to murder me and make it look like suicide. Not if we get to them first. I spread out a map of the city on my kitchen table. Here's what we're going to do. The plan required us to study each other's mannerisms intensively. Despite being identical twins, Derek and I had developed different ways of moving, speaking, and reacting over our 28 years of life. If I was going to fool Amanda and her brothers, every detail had to be perfect. We spent the next 2 days practicing. Derek taught me his nervous habits, the way he rubbed his left temple when stressed, how he looked down when he felt ashamed, the specific way he held his shoulders when he was trying to appear smaller and less threatening. Amanda notices everything, Derek warned me. She'll catch the smallest inconsistency. I practiced Derek's voice patterns, his laugh, even the way he walked when he was afraid. It was heartbreaking to learn all the ways my confident, successful brother had been trained to act submissive and beaten down. The hardest part will be taking the drugs, Derek said. She gives me 2 pills every morning with breakfast. Blue capsules that make me drowsy and compliant within about 20 minutes. What if I don't take them? She'll notice immediately. She watches me swallow them, then checks my mood and behavior for the next few hours. If I seem too alert or assertive, she gets suspicious and calls her brothers. I had an idea. What if we replace the contents? Switch out whatever she's giving you with something harmless? Derek's eyes lit up. That could work. The capsules open up easily. We could empty them and refill them with something that won't hurt me, but won't make me compliant either. We spent hours researching harmless substances that could mimic the appearance of pills. Finally, we settled on using empty capsules filled with powdered vitamin B complex. It would be energizing rather than sedating, but hopefully not noticeable in the short term. But the drug substitution was just the beginning of our problems. Byron, there's something else you need to know about Amanda, Derek said on our second day of preparation. She's not just manipulative, she's brilliant, scary brilliant. She'll test you in ways you don't expect. What kind of tests? She asks random questions about our past, about conversations we've had, about things only I would know. She's building a database of information to use against me. If you get something wrong, she'll know something's up. Derek spent the rest of the day downloading me with intimate details about his relationship with Amanda. Their first date, their wedding night, arguments they'd had, inside jokes, even the pet names she used for him. She calls me puppy when she's being affectionate, Derek said, his face flushing with embarrassment. It's supposed to be endearing, but now it feels like she's treating me like a pet she's training. The more Derek told me about Amanda's behavior, the more I understood the sophisticated psychological warfare she'd been waging against him. Every interaction was calculated to reinforce his dependence on her approval and his fear of her disapproval. The worst part, Derek continued, is that she makes me grateful when she's not hurting me. When her brothers don't show up for a week, when she's nice to me during dinner, when she lets me talk to you on the phone without listening in, she's trained me to see normal human decency as a special favor she's granting me. I felt rage building in my chest again. Derek, what she's done to you is torture. Psychological torture designed to break down your resistance and make you easier to control. I know that now. But when you're living it day by day, it's hard to see the pattern. Each thing seems small by itself. It's only when you add them all up that you realize how comprehensive the manipulation is. On our third day of preparation, Derek revealed something that changed everything. Byron, Amanda's been giving me more than just sedatives. I found extra pill bottles hidden in her purse, muscle relaxants, blood pressure medication, even something called digoxin that I looked up online. What's digoxin? Heart medication. But if you give it to someone who doesn't have heart problems, it can cause irregular heartbeat, confusion, even death, if the dose is high enough. My blood went cold. She's been slowly poisoning you. I think so. All those times I felt weak and dizzy, when I thought I was just stressed from the beatings. She's been systematically drugging me with multiple substances to make me compliant and unhealthy. I think the plan was to gradually increase the dosages until I had what looked like a natural medical emergency. Derek, this isn't just inheritance theft. This is attempted murder that's been going on for months. Derek nodded grimly. She's been documenting my health problems too, taking photos of me when I look sick, recording videos of me when the drugs make me confused or emotional. She's building evidence that I was mentally and physically unstable. The scope of Amanda's planning was terrifying. She hadn't just been stealing Derek's money, she'd been carefully constructing a narrative that would explain his death in a way that wouldn't raise suspicions. There's more, Derek said quietly. Yesterday I found text messages between Amanda and someone called Dr. Minio. They were discussing my treatment plan and how my condition was progressing. Dr. M? I think it's Dr. Morrison, Amanda's family doctor. The messages suggest he's been providing her with medical advice about drug interactions and dosages. I think he's part of the conspiracy. I stared at Derek in horror. How many people are involved in this? More than we thought. And Byron, if they figure out we've switched places, they'll kill us both immediately. This isn't just about money anymore. We know too much about their operation. We're a threat to everyone involved. That night, I lay awake thinking about what Derek and I were about to attempt. We weren't just trying to escape from abusive criminals, to Bowder. We were about to infiltrate a sophisticated criminal organization that had successfully murdered multiple people and covered it up. But as I looked at my brother sleeping fitfully on my couch, still healing from his latest beating, I knew we didn't have a choice. Amanda and her co-conspirators had made the decision to destroy Derek's life and kill him for money. Now they were going to learn what happened when they threatened the wrong family. Derek might have been broken down by months of systematic abuse, but I was walking into this fight with my eyes wide open and my fists ready. The war was about to begin, and this time, the Walsh family was going to lose everything. I stood outside Amanda and Derek's house at 7:30 in the morning, wearing Derek's clothes and trying to channel his broken posture and defeated expression. Everything about the modest two-story home looked normal from the outside. Well-maintained lawn, cheerful yellow shutters, even a garden gnome by the front door. It was the perfect disguise for the torture chamber I knew existed inside. Amanda opened the door before I could even knock, as if she'd been watching from the window. "Where have you been?" Her voice carried that particular tone Derek had warned me about, sweet on the surface but with an undertone of barely controlled rage. "I stayed at Byron's place for a couple days," I said, mimicking Derek's habit of looking down when he felt ashamed. "I needed some space to think." Amanda's eyes narrowed slightly as she studied my face. Even with Derek's exact features, I could feel her searching for something that didn't fit. Space. To think about what? About us. About the papers you want me to sign. I forced my voice to crack slightly, the way Derek's did when he was scared. "I'm ready to talk about it." Something shifted in Amanda's expression, a flash of triumph that she tried to hide behind fake concern. "Oh, puppy, I'm so glad you're ready to work on our problems together." She reached up and touched my cheek with false tenderness. "Come, have breakfast. I made your favorite." I followed Amanda into the kitchen, noting every detail Derek had told me to watch for. The way she positioned herself between me and the back door. How she kept glancing toward the living room, where I could hear the television, meaning at least one of her brothers was already in the house. "Here, take your vitamins first," Amanda said, setting 2 blue capsules next to a glass of orange juice. "You look tired, and I want you feeling your best for our conversation." I palmed the fake vitamins, Derek, and I had prepared and made a show of swallowing them with the orange juice. The juice tasted bitter, definitely drugged with something beyond the pills. Amanda really was covering all her bases. "Good boy," Amanda said, and the condescending praise made my skin crawl. "Now sit down and eat. We have a lot to discuss." As I ate the eggs and toast Amanda had prepared, I felt her watching my every movement. Derek had warned me that she studied his behavior constantly, looking for signs of rebellion or deception. "You seem different this morning," Amanda said after a few minutes. "More relaxed. I think staying at Byron's was good for you." "Yeah, he helped me realize some things," I said carefully, "about how I've been handling stress lately." Amanda's smile didn't reach her eyes. "What kind of things?" "Just that I've been making our problems worse by being stubborn about financial planning. Maybe you're right about consolidating our assets." I watched Amanda's face transform, as she realized she was finally getting what she'd been working toward for over a year. The fake concern melted away, replaced by cold satisfaction. "I'm so proud of you for growing up and seeing the bigger picture," she said. "It shows real maturity." 20 minutes later, right on schedule according to Derek's warning, I started feeling the effects of whatever Amanda had put in the orange juice. Drowsiness, mental fog, and a strange sense of compliance that made me understand how Derek had been trapped for so long. But because I'd only consumed a fraction of the intended dose and had eaten a full meal first, the effects were manageable. I let my posture slump and my speech slow slightly, playing the part of the drugged, compliant Derek. "The papers are upstairs," Amanda said. "Why don't we go look at them together?" As we climbed the stairs, I heard heavy footsteps in the kitchen below. Amanda's brothers were arriving right on schedule, just as Derek had predicted. Tony's voice carried clearly through the house as he talked to someone on his phone about finishing the job today. Amanda led me into the master bedroom and pulled a folder from the dresser drawer. The asset transfer papers were even more comprehensive than what Derek had shown me. They would give Amanda complete control over not just his inheritance, but his retirement accounts, life insurance policies, and even his credit cards. "See how much simpler this will make everything?" Amanda said, spreading the papers across the bed. "No more confusion about money, no more stress about financial planning. I'll handle all of that for you." I picked up the pen Amanda offered, making my hand shake slightly, as if the drugs were affecting my coordination. "I just want to read through it one more time." "Of course, puppy. Take your time." As I pretended to read the legal documents, I heard more voices downstairs. All 3 brothers were now in the house, and their conversation was getting louder and more aggressive. "Where is he?" That was Brad's voice, rough and impatient. "Upstairs with Amanda," Tony replied. "Should be ready soon." "About time," Jason added. "I'm tired of waiting around for this loser to do what he's supposed to do." Amanda heard the conversation too, and I saw her relax as she realized her backup plan was in place. If I refused to sign the papers, her brothers were standing by to provide motivation. "They're here to help you make the right decision," Amanda said, her voice losing all pretense of sweetness. "Just like they've helped you see reason before." I looked up at Amanda, with what I hoped was Derek's expression of defeated fear. "I'll sign it." But as I moved the pen toward the signature line, I knocked over the glass of water Amanda had brought upstairs. The water spilled across the papers, smudging the ink and making them unusable. "Oh God, I'm sorry," I stammered, playing up the drug-induced clumsiness. "I'm so clumsy when I take those pills." Amanda's mask slipped completely. "You stupid, worthless piece of garbage," she screamed. "Can't you do anything right?" The venom in her voice was shocking. This was the real Amanda, too, the woman who'd been hiding behind a facade of loving concern while systematically destroying my brother's life. "I can print new copies," I offered weakly. "You'll sign them right now, or my brothers are going to teach you another lesson about following directions," Amanda snarled. "And this time, they're not going to be as gentle as they have been." Heavy footsteps started climbing the stairs. All three Walsh brothers were coming up, and from the sound of their voices, they were done playing games. "Amanda says you're being difficult again," Tony's voice boomed as he appeared in the doorway. At 6'3" and probably 250 pounds, he looked exactly as Derek had described, a human sledgehammer, with fists like cinder blocks. "We don't have time for your games today," Brad added, stepping into the room behind Tony, shorter but wiry, with scars on his knuckles that spoke to years of violence. "You're going to sign those papers, or we're going to break every bone in your worthless body." Jason brought up the rear, nervous energy radiating from his slight frame. He looked like the type who enjoyed causing pain because it made him feel powerful. "Please," I said, channeling Derek's learned helplessness. "I said I'd sign them. I just need new papers." "Too late for please," Tony said, cracking his knuckles. "You've wasted enough of our time." What happened next unfolded exactly as Derek had described from his previous beatings. Tony grabbed me by the shirt and threw me against the bedroom wall. Brad moved to block the door, while Jason took position by the window to watch for neighbors or police. But there was one crucial difference between this beating and all the previous ones. I wasn't Derek. When Tony's first punch came toward my ribs, I was ready for it. 3 years of boxing training kicked in as I deflected his blow and countered with an uppercut that caught him completely off guard. Tony staggered backward, blood streaming from his nose. "What the hell?" I didn't answer. I was too busy ducking Brad's wild swing and landing a combination to his solar plexus that doubled him over, gasping for air. Jason rushed toward me with what looked like brass knuckles, but I caught his wrist and twisted until he dropped the weapon with a scream of pain. "This isn't how it's supposed to go," Amanda shrieked. "He doesn't fight back." But I was just getting started. Months of rage at what these animals had done to my brother poured out in a flurry of precisely aimed punches. Tony tried to rush me again, but I sidestepped and used his momentum to send him crashing into Amanda's dresser. The brothers weren't expecting resistance, and their coordination fell apart completely when their victim started fighting back effectively. But as satisfying as it was to finally hurt the people who'd tortured Derek, I remembered my real purpose: gathering evidence. "Why are you doing this to Derek?" I demanded, holding Jason in a chokehold while Tony and Brad struggled to recover. "What did he ever do to you? Derek?" Amanda's voice was shrill with confusion and growing panic. "You are Derek." "No," I said, tightening my grip on Jason until he gasped. "I'm Byron, Derek's twin brother, and I know exactly what you've been doing to him." The color drained from Amanda's face as she realized their carefully planned operation had been compromised. But before she could respond, Jason managed to break free from my hold and stumbled toward the bedroom door. "They know!" he screamed toward the stairs. "Someone else is here. It's a setup." That's when I heard something that made my blood freeze. The sound of a car door slamming outside, followed by footsteps on the front porch. Amanda's smile returned, cold and triumphant. "You have no idea how deep this goes, Byron, and you just made the biggest mistake of your life by coming here." As voices filled the house below, more voices than just Derek's, I realized our carefully planned infiltration had just become a fight for survival. The footsteps downstairs weren't just Amanda's backup arriving. They were coordinated, purposeful, and too numerous for this to be a coincidence. As I held my defensive position in the bedroom, I realized Derek and I had walked into something far more sophisticated than a simple inheritance scam. Surprised? Amanda's voice dripped with malicious satisfaction. You thought you were so clever, switching places with your pathetic brother, but we've known about your little game for days. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. Amanda laughed, a sound devoid of any human warmth. Derek stopped acting properly drugged 3 days ago. Started asking different questions, moving with more confidence than he's had in months. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when my broken little puppet suddenly grew a spine? Tony wiped blood from his nose and grinned at me with genuine hatred. We've been planning this moment since Tuesday, you stupid piece of trash. Tonight was always going to be Derek's last night alive. But now we get to kill both of you. Jason pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Carol, bring them upstairs. Both packages are here. The sound of multiple people climbing the stairs made me realize how outnumbered I was about to be. But it was Amanda's next words that truly terrified me. Byron, meet the rest of the family business. Carol Walsh appeared in the doorway first, a woman who looked like Amanda but with harder eyes and a more predatory smile. Behind her came 2 men I'd never seen before, both built like professional enforcers. But it was the last person who entered the room that made my legs nearly give out from shock. Derek stumbled through the door, his face freshly beaten and his hands zip-tied behind his back. One of Carol's men pushed him roughly to his knees in the center of the bedroom. Surprise, Carol said, her voice sickeningly cheerful. We picked up your brother this morning, from your apartment. He put up quite a fight, but Mark and Stevens know how to handle difficult men. Derek's eyes met mine across the room, and I saw an apology there that broke my heart. I'm sorry, Byron. They were waiting for me when I woke up. Amanda clapped her hands together like a child at a birthday party. Now we have both brothers. This is even better than I planned. How did you find Derek? I demanded, trying to buy time, while I calculated the odds of fighting my way out of a room containing 6 dangerous criminals. Simple surveillance, Carol explained, pulling out her phone to show me photos of Derek entering and leaving my apartment building. We've been watching your place since Monday, waiting for the right moment to collect him. Tony cracked his knuckles menacingly. But then you showed up here pretending to be Derek, and we realized we could have some real fun with this situation. Amanda walked over to Derek and grabbed his chin, forcing him to look up at her. Tell Byron what you told me about the inheritance when I questioned you this morning. Derek's voice was barely a whisper. I told her everything. About Grandma Rosemary's money, the property downtown, even the safe deposit box you don't know about. My heart sank. If Derek had been forced to reveal all his assets under torture, Amanda now knew about money I wasn't even aware existed. $2.3 million, Amanda said dreamily. Between the inheritance, the property value, Derek's retirement accounts, and the contents of that safe deposit box. Much more than we originally thought. But here's the beautiful part, Carol added. We're not just going to steal Derek's money anymore. We're going to inherit it legally. Brad pulled out a folder I hadn't noticed before. Life insurance policies. Derek signed applications for $3 million in coverage last month, naming Amanda as the sole beneficiary. I never signed any life insurance applications, Derek protested. Jason held up several sheets of paper covered with Derek's signature. Practice makes perfect. Amanda's been collecting samples of your signature for months. Our friend at the insurance company was very accommodating when we explained the situation. The scope of their planning was staggering. They hadn't just been planning to steal Derek's existing assets, they'd been creating new financial instruments to maximize their profit from his death. And the best part, Amanda continued, is that Derek's twin brother Byron tragically died trying to save him from a home invasion gone wrong. Very sad story. 2 brothers, killed by burglars who were after Derek's gambling winnings. Gambling winnings? I asked. Carol smiled and pulled out more forged documents. Derek's been secretly gambling online for months. Very irresponsible behavior for an accountant. lost nearly $50,000 before he got desperate and started stealing from his clients to cover his debts. We've been building this backstory for weeks, Tony explained. Bank records, emails, even testimony from Derek's coworkers about his erratic behavior lately. I realized they weren't just planning to kill Derek and steal his money. They were creating an elaborate cover story that would explain both our deaths while deflecting any suspicion from Amanda and her family. The gambling story explains why dangerous people might target Derek, Brad continued. And Byron's death makes sense because he was trying to protect his brother from loan sharks. Very touching, Jason added mockingly. Twin brothers, died together defending each other. Amanda walked over to me, her face glowing with twisted satisfaction. Do you understand now, Byron? You didn't just walk into a trap. You walked into the climax of a year-long operation that's been planned down to the smallest detail. But before we finish this, Carol said, settling into a chair like she was getting comfortable for a show, Amanda wants to explain exactly how clever she's been. She's quite proud of her work. Amanda's eyes lit up with the fervor of someone who'd been waiting months to reveal her masterpiece. Byron, your brother never had a chance from the moment I picked him as my target. Everything that's happened has been carefully orchestrated. I researched Derek for 3 months before I ever spoke to him. Amanda continued. Social media, employment records, family background, financial status. I knew about the inheritance before our first date. Derek looked up at her with broken confusion. But we met at the coffee shop near your work. It was random. Amanda laughed cruelly. Random? Derek, I knew your schedule better than you did. I knew you stopped at that coffee shop every Tuesday and Thursday at exactly 8:45 a.m. I timed our chance encounter perfectly. Even our first conversation was scripted, Carol added. Amanda spent weeks learning about accounting, your hobbies, even your favorite books, so she could seem like the perfect woman for you. The whirlwind romance, the quick marriage, even the miscarriage that made you feel so sorry for me, Amanda continued, her voice growing more animated. All calculated to create emotional dependency and isolate you from people who might notice inconsistencies in my story. Derek's face went white. You were never pregnant? Of course not, you naive little boy. But the fake miscarriage served multiple purposes. It made you feel protective of me, it explained why I was sometimes moody or distant, and it gave me an excuse to avoid physical intimacy that might have revealed things about my past. I felt rage building beyond anything I'd ever experienced. They hadn't just stolen Derek's money and dignity, they'd turned every moment of love and tenderness he'd believed in into a calculated lie. And the brothers? I asked through gritted teeth. My real brothers, Amanda said proudly. We've been working together since I was 16 years old. This is the family business, Byron. We find vulnerable men with assets, destroy them psychologically and financially, then eliminate them permanently. Carol stood up and walked to the window. Amanda's the honeypot, the brothers are enforcement, and I handle the legal and financial paperwork. We've perfected this system across 7 states over 12 years. 17 successful operations, Tony added. You and Derek will be 18 and 19. The casual way they discussed mass murder made me realize I wasn't dealing with ordinary criminals. These were professional predators who'd turned destroying lives into an art form. But you made one crucial mistake, Amanda said, turning to face both Derek and me. You thought you could outsmart us. You thought you could save Derek and expose our operation. Instead, Carol continued, you've given us the perfect setup for our biggest score yet. 2 brothers, tragically murdered, with Derek's wife inheriting everything as his legal next of kin. Amanda pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. I've been recording our entire conversation. Evidence of Byron's unstable behavior and threats against the family. Very useful for explaining why the situation escalated to violence. As I looked around the room at the faces of 6 people who'd spent months planning my brother's murder, I realized Derek and I had stumbled into something far worse than inheritance theft. We'd discovered a serial killing operation that had been perfecting their method for over a decade, and now we were about to become their latest victims. But as Amanda and Carol continued gloating about their elaborate plan, they made one crucial mistake. They assumed Derek and I were helpless victims who would go to our deaths quietly and obediently. They were about to learn they were very, very wrong. The Walsh family's fatal flaw was the same arrogance that had allowed them to operate for 12 years without getting caught. They believed their victims were fundamentally weak and that superior planning guaranteed victory, but they'd never encountered anyone who'd spent 3 days preparing for exactly this scenario. While Amanda and Carol gloated about their perfect crime, I caught Derek's eye and nodded almost imperceptibly toward the dresser, where I'd hidden the small recorder I'd brought as backup insurance. Derek's slight nod back told me he understood. "Before you kill us," I said loudly, making sure the hidden recorder would pick up every word, "I want to understand exactly how many men you've murdered." Amanda's face lit up with pride. 17 successful operations over 12 years. Michael Stevens in Colorado, Robert Chen in Nevada, David Martinez in Arizona. She began listing names, dates, and locations with the enthusiasm of someone discussing a successful business venture. Carol joined in, providing details about forged documents, bribed officials, and insurance payouts. Tony, Brad, and Jason added their own contributions about the violence they'd used to break their victims' resistance. For 10 minutes, I got them to confess to nearly 2 decades of systematic murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Every word was being recorded by the device they didn't know existed, but the recording was worthless if Derek and I died tonight. I needed a way to get the evidence to law enforcement and survive long enough to testify. "There's something you should know," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear clearly. "Derek and I didn't come up with this plan alone." Amanda's smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" "We contacted Detective Sarah Martinez with the Portland Police Fraud Division 3 days ago. She's been investigating suspicious deaths linked to inheritance fraud for 2 years. She knows we're here tonight." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Carol and Amanda exchanged worried glances. "You're lying," Tony said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Derek, show them the business card Detective Martinez gave us." Derek managed to work his hands around to his front pocket despite the zip ties. He pulled out the card I'd told him to keep as a prop for exactly this moment. Carol snatched the card and examined it. "This doesn't prove anything. You could have gotten this anywhere." "Call the number," I suggested. "Ask for Detective Martinez. Tell her Byron and Derek Walsh are in immediate danger at 1643 Maple Street. See how fast she responds." Amanda was staring at me with pure hatred. "Even if you contacted the police, there's no evidence of anything illegal. Derek's going to die in a tragic home invasion, and you're going to die trying to save him. 2 more random crime victims." "Except for the recording," I said calmly. "What recording?" I glanced toward the dresser. "The one that's been running since I walked into this room. The one that captured your confession to 17 murders." Jason rushed to the dresser and started frantically searching through drawers. When he found the small digital recorder, his face went white. "It's been recording for 37 minutes, he reported, staring at the display. The room erupted in panic. Carol started screaming at Amanda about operational security. Tony and Brad began arguing about whether they should run or try to clean up the situation. Jason kept staring at the recorder like it was a venomous snake. But Amanda's reaction was the most terrifying. She went completely calm. "Destroy the recorder," she said quietly. "Kill both brothers immediately. Burn the house down with the bodies inside. Make it look like a gas explosion." "That's not the original plan," Carol protested. "The original plan didn't account for police involvement and recorded confessions," Amanda replied coldly. "We adapt or we go to prison for life." Tony moved toward me with murderous intent in his eyes. But before he could reach me, we all heard the sound that changed everything. Sirens. Multiple police cars. Getting closer rapidly. "You actually did call the police," Amanda breathed, her face a mask of disbelief and rage. "I told you we weren't as naive as Derek was when you first targeted him," I replied. "Detective Martinez has been waiting for exactly this kind of evidence." The sirens were getting louder. Through the bedroom window, I could see red and blue lights reflecting off the neighboring houses. Carol ran to the window and cursed when she saw the street filling with police cars. There are at least 6 units out there. And what looks like a SWAT van. How? Amanda demanded. How did you know we'd figured out the switch? We didn't, Derek admitted. But Byron planned for the possibility that your operation might be bigger than just you and your brothers. We've been in contact with Detective Martinez since Monday. She's been building a case against your family for 18 months, I added. We just gave her the final pieces she needed. Amanda's face contorted with fury. You self-righteous little worms think you've won? Even if we go to prison, you'll never recover from what I've done to Derek's mind. I broke him completely. He'll never be the same person he was before I destroyed him. But Derek surprised everyone in the room, including me, with his response. You're wrong, he said, his voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. You broke the person I was pretending to be to survive your abuse. But the real Derek never went anywhere. He was just waiting for the right moment to fight back. Derek had managed to work his hands free from the zip ties during the confusion. Now he stood up with a confidence and strength that made Amanda step backward involuntarily. For 11 months, you made me believe I was weak, worthless, and deserving of punishment, Derek continued. But spending 3 days planning this operation with Byron reminded me who I really am. I'm not your victim anymore, Amanda. I'm the man who's going to testify at your trial and make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. A voice outside called through a megaphone. This is the Portland Police. The house is surrounded. Everyone inside, exit through the front door with your hands visible. Amanda looked around the room at her trapped family members, then back at Derek and me. The arrogance and control she'd maintained for over a year crumbled completely. This isn't over, she snarled. Yes, it is, Derek replied calmly. It's been over since the moment you decided to hurt my family. As the Walsh family was led out of the house in handcuffs 20 minutes later, Detective Martinez explained that they'd been under surveillance for 2 days. Our recorded confessions were just the final evidence needed for arrests that were already planned. We've been building cases against the Walsh family operation in 4 states, she told Derek and me as paramedics checked our injuries. Your willingness to go undercover gave us evidence we never could have obtained through normal investigation. How many victims were there really? Derek asked. 23 confirmed deaths over 14 years, Detective Martinez replied. Your brother's recording tonight connected the Walsh family to murders we suspected but couldn't prove. As I watched Amanda being placed in the back of a police car, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. Hope for Derek's recovery and justice for all their victims. The war was finally over, and the people who'd tried to destroy my brother were going to face the consequences of their actions. But the real victory would come in the months ahead, as Derek rebuilt his life and found a way to help other victims of similar predators. 6 months later, I sat in the Portland Federal Courthouse watching Amanda Walsh receive a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for multiple counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. Her brothers received sentences ranging from 25 years to life, depending on their level of involvement in the killings. The trial had been a media sensation. 23 families finally got answers about the deaths of their loved ones. The scope of the Walsh family operation shocked law enforcement across 7 states. End of note. They'd been operating essentially as a serial killing organization disguised as inheritance fraud. Detective Martinez testified that our recorded confessions provided the breakthrough that connected decades of unsolved cases. The FBI had traced the Walsh family's activities back to Amanda's first murder in 2093, a 19-year-old college student whose death had been classified as suicide until our evidence proved otherwise. But for Derek and me, the trial was just the end of the legal process. The real work had been Derek's recovery and transformation over the previous 6 months. The psychological damage Amanda had inflicted was severe. Derek had spent his first month after the arrests in therapy 3 times a week, working through trauma that went far deeper than physical abuse. He'd been systematically psychologically tortured by someone he loved and trusted, and rebuilding his sense of reality and self-worth required professional help and incredible personal courage. The hardest part Derek told his therapist during one session I was allowed to observe, wasn't the beatings, or even the fear of being killed. It was losing the ability to trust my own judgment about people and situations. Amanda had been so skilled at manipulating Derek's perceptions that he'd questioned everything about himself, his intelligence, his worth as a human being, even his memories of events. Recovery meant learning to trust his own mind again. But Derek's healing progressed faster than anyone expected, primarily because he'd found a purpose that gave meaning to his suffering. 3 months after the arrests, Derek used his inheritance to establish the Rosemary Walsh Foundation, named after our grandmother, not Amanda, to help male victims of domestic abuse and financial manipulation. The foundation provided legal assistance, counseling services, and safe housing for men trying to escape abusive relationships. People don't realize how common this kind of abuse is, Derek explained to reporters at the foundation's opening ceremony. Men are taught that we should be able to protect ourselves, so when we become victims of systematic manipulation and abuse, we often suffer in silence because we're ashamed. The foundation's first major project was funding research into the psychological tactics used by predatory individuals to isolate and control their victims. Derek worked with law enforcement agencies to develop training programs for recognizing signs of inheritance, fraud, and systematic abuse. Amanda and her family weren't unique, Derek told a conference of police detectives 6 months after their conviction. There are other predators using similar tactics across the country. But now we know what to look for. Derek's transformation from victim to advocate was remarkable. The broken, fearful man I'd found on my doorstep had become someone who spoke with authority and confidence about protecting other vulnerable people. But perhaps more importantly, Derek had reclaimed his identity and sense of self-worth. "I'm not grateful for what Amanda did to me," Derek told me during one of our weekly dinners together, "but I'm grateful for what I learned about my own strength and resilience. She tried to destroy me, and not only did she fail, but her actions led to stopping a criminal organization that had been killing people for years." Derek's relationship with our parents had also been repaired. Amanda had successfully isolated him from family for nearly a year, but the crisis had brought us all closer together. Our parents now understood the warning signs of psychological abuse and had become volunteers with Derek's foundation. As for me, the experience had changed my perspective on family and responsibility. I'd always loved Derek, but I'd never truly understood how quickly someone could become trapped in an abusive situation. The experience taught me to pay closer attention to the people I cared about and to recognize when someone might be silently suffering. I also testified at conferences about the importance of family intervention in abuse situations. Derek couldn't save himself, I told audiences of law enforcement officers and social workers. But he could be saved when someone who loved him was willing to take risks to help him. The commercial property Derek inherited became the headquarters for his foundation, a symbol of how something intended for evil had been transformed into a force for protecting other people. On the first anniversary of Amanda's arrest, Derek and I attended the dedication ceremony for the Foundation's new Crisis Intervention Center. Watching Derek cut the ribbon on a facility that would provide emergency assistance to abuse victims, I reflected on how much both our lives had changed. "Do you ever regret that we didn't try to handle this differently?" Derek asked me that evening as we walked through the neighborhood where he'd once lived in terror. "Never," I replied without hesitation. "Sometimes the only way to stop evil is to confront it directly, regardless of the risks." Derek nodded thoughtfully. Amanda and her family spent years believing that other people existed for their exploitation. They thought empathy and love were weaknesses they could manipulate. But those were exactly the qualities that led to their downfall. How so? "Your love for me made you willing to risk your life to save mine. My love for other potential victims motivated me to testify and start the foundation." Even Detective Martinez's compassion for victims drove her to pursue the case when other departments might have given up. Derek was right. The Walsh family's fundamental misunderstanding of human nature had ultimately destroyed them. They'd built their criminal operation on the assumption that love and loyalty were vulnerabilities to be exploited. But those same qualities had motivated everyone who brought them down. As we stood outside the Foundation's building that evening, Derek asked me a question that showed how completely he'd recovered from Amanda's psychological damage. "Byron, what do you think our purpose is in life? What's the point of surviving something like this?" I thought about his question carefully before answering. "I think our purpose is to use our experiences to protect other people from similar suffering, and to prove that evil doesn't get the final word in anyone's story if people are willing to fight back." Derek smiled. The first completely genuine, unguarded smile I'd seen from him since before he met Amanda. Then I'd say we've accomplished our purpose. 6 months later, Derek spoke at a national conference on domestic abuse prevention. His presentation was titled, "From Victim to Victory: Breaking the Cycle of Predatory Relationships." "The people who tried to destroy me failed," Derek told an audience of 500 advocates, law enforcement officers, and survivors. "But more importantly, their failure led to protecting dozens of other potential victims. Every person who learns to recognize the warning signs of systematic abuse becomes part of a network that protects our communities from predators." As I watched Derek speak with confidence and authority about his experiences, I realized that Amanda's greatest miscalculation hadn't been underestimating law enforcement or missing our surveillance preparations. Her greatest mistake had been believing that destroying Derek's spirit would be permanent. She'd never understood that the love and support of family could rebuild what cruelty had torn down. Derek concluded his presentation with words that captured everything we'd learned from our experience. "The predators among us count on isolation, shame, and fear to keep their victims silent. But when we refuse to suffer alone, when we trust the people who love us enough to ask for help, and when we're willing to fight back against injustice, we become stronger than any individual who would try to destroy us." The audience gave Derek a standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. As I watched him accept their appreciation, I felt proud not just of my brother's courage, but of the simple truth that had guided us through the darkest period of our lives. Family means never giving up on each other. Love is stronger than fear. And sometimes the only way to stop evil is to stand up and fight back, no matter how dangerous the battle might be. Derek and I had learned that lesson the hard way. But we'd also proved that it was true. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up for someone you loved when they couldn't protect themselves? What would you do if you discovered a family member was being systematically abused and manipulated? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else recognize warning signs or find the courage to take action. If this story moved you or taught you something valuable about family loyalty and standing up to predators, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more true stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. And please share this video with anyone who might benefit from understanding the warning signs of psychological abuse and manipulation. Thank you for listening to Derek's story and mine. Remember that no matter how dark things might seem, there's always hope when people refuse to give up on each other. Take care of yourselves and the people you love.